Negotiations because President Trump is set to meet with members of Congress today to discuss trade as Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer head to China for more talks at the end of the week. Joseph Minarik is the Senior Vice President and Director of Research at the Conference Board. He joins us now. Joe, good morning.
Good morning.
Do you see the two sides making any real progress here?
This is a difficult negotiation. If we were just talking about the level of tariffs, it would be an awful lot easier. But at this point, it looks like both sides are seeing the consequences for their economies, and they're going to want a deal.
The consequences for the economies, negative, I'd say, for China and for the U.S. here. So doesn't that bring them to the negotiating table to actually hammer out a deal? That's
the motivation at this point. It's going to be getting stronger as time goes by. The consequences are getting worse.
Is the deck cleared now for the U.S. in driving a hard bargain now that the Mueller report is out? And it is a very favorable report for President Trump. Does that help in his ability to get more extracted from China in these negotiations?
It probably takes some of the concern on the U.S. side off of the table. The Chinese could look at a president under investigation and say that he needs a deal badly, so we'll drive a harder bargain. There's no question. I don't think that this makes the U.S. a stronger negotiator.
The Chinese seem to be perturbed that you can say, you know, we want our cake and we want to eat it too, that we're trying to get as much as we can concession-wise from Beijing, but we're going to keep the tariffs on. How does that strategy play out?
I would imagine that it would make China a more resolute negotiator. The tariffs were put on in the first place to try to motivate negotiation and a deal. I do not see the Chinese looking kindly on the notion that the U.S. gets concessions and gets to keep its tariffs in place.
You have a lot of side stories playing in here, Joe. You have China buying from Boeing rival Airbus, placing a $35 billion order. You have everything going on with Huawei and 5G. And over the weekend, 2 American warships in the Strait of Taiwan. How do all those side stories play in?
It certainly makes things more complex. And in some sense, to the extent that it interferes with getting down to the issues, it may make the negotiations a lot harder. You would prefer to have folks looking at the trade issues alone and trying to resolve them. That's complex enough.
Do we get a deal, yes or no, Joe?
Yes, we can get a deal. We should get a deal. If we don't, the consequences for both economies will be adverse.
All right. Joseph Minarik, thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
Well, economic reports